Before we get into this special weekend edition of Just the Truth, let me tell you about the latest special from Mike Lindell at MyPillow. The standard MyPillow, normally $49.98, for a limited time only, just $14.88 with promo code Joey. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener specials, and see all the specials. There's a limited quantity of just 10 at this special price. That's $14.88 with promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Chad Connelly is the founder and CEO of a wonderful organization that's doing God's work across the nation. Faith Wins. Faith Wins is dedicated to educating, activating, mobilizing faith leaders across the nation to give them the tools they need to use their influence to promote conservative Christian values in the political process. I'm happy to say Chad joins us on the Truth Talk Live guest line today. Welcome, Chad. How are you?
Hey, Joey. How you doing, brother?
I am wonderful. Glad to have you, my friend, and I appreciate you spending a few minutes of your day with us this afternoon. Let's start, Chad.
I'm honored. I'm thankful for my wife, who lets me drag her around the world.
Now, that's something to be thankful for sure, on this Thankful Thursday. Right. Yes, for sure. Let's start, Chad, with just give us a quick introduction of Faith Wins, what it's all about. Give us your elevator speech, if you will.
Yeah, sure. You know, I left chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party and went to work for Priebus, and then, of course, for the Trump campaign in 2016 through the RNC, and ran GOP Faith. And, of course, you know, I had been widowed and remarried. Dane and I were putting a new family together. So when the opportunity came to work in the first administration, I didn't need to be in D.C. I had a family to build. We had 4 little kids who'd lost parents, of course. You know the story. Yes. And so I started Faith Wins in 2017. So we're starting our 9th year. And I just saw the impact, Joey. And as a Christian first and a conservative and, you know, been a Republican for my whole life, I just saw that many in the public arena, especially from the consulting class seem to minimize and almost eliminate the real impact of the faith vote. And I've been all over the country when I was with running GOP Faith. I went to 43 states and spoke to about 80,000 pastors with that simple message. It's not about a party or a person. It's about policies and principles. Now, if you're paying attention, we know which way conservative biblical Christians are going to vote. So when I started Faith Wins, it was just about, let's don't just have our votes felt, let's have our voices heard. So that's the elevator speech of just trying to impact the public arena with the Christian faith and our belief.
Yeah. Chad, just last week you had your 2025 Faith Wins Pastor Summit in the nation's capital. Who typically attends your Pastor Summit?
Well, you know, I have donors that support that, and I handpick the pastors who have emerged in the key states, Joey. So I guess we had about 60-something pastors. We had a bunch of wives, and we had almost 100 people total because speakers wanted to hang out with us. But we had about 100 people in the U.S. Capitol singing How Great Thou Art and God Bless America and Amazing Grace. Man, it was awesome. But they were from, I had 20 different states represented plus D.C., so I guess you could say 21 if you count it that way, and from 12 different denominations. We worked really hard to tell pastors, look, we don't have to agree on what time we meet or which hymnal we sing out of or any of that stuff. But if we don't link arms about religious liberty and Israel and life and marriage, just common sense biblical approaches, we're losing the country, and it's our fault. And, you know, you've seen me speak. That George Barna book in the early 2000s really impacted me. Was something like 80 million people sitting in churches and only 32 million voting in a high watermark. It's our fault. If we're not happy about policies or things that impact us, we need to go impact it. And I've made it my life's work, Joey.
Yeah, and what a great job you're doing. I mean, you're touching a lot of lives who, in turn, those pastors touch a lot of lives as well. You know, you talk often about helping the church find its voice, helping these pastors find their voice. What do you mean by that?
You know, it's a great question. I don't know if you saw my article. It's gotten some traction in some of the conservative press. I wrote about the Johnson Amendment decision by the IRS to settle and to say we're not going to pursue this. It seems like there are too many people in the pastorate who've taken the easy path. You know, I was just in Israel. We took 20 pastors and their wives to Israel in April, and we stood on the Mount of Beatitudes, and I had a pastor from Las Vegas preach on Matthew 5, those verses 13 to 16. Most believers are going to be familiar where Jesus says we got to be salt. And he says if the salt has lost its savor, it's good for nothing to be thrown in the street and trodden before the feet of men. I don't know about you, Joey, but as a believer, that sounds like the worst day to have the Father say you were good for nothing. And you think about how many people waste their time with just wrong effort or distraction, and we got to get focused on what really makes an impact. And so I decided a long time ago when I started this, we're going to show pastors how they can use their voice, not because it's politics, but because it's spiritual. And I tell them, I said, yeah, life and marriage and Israel have been politicized, but it doesn't remove our responsibility to tell the truth. So I'm just trying to show them how they've got more leverage and more impact than they can ever imagine, and the ripple effect is massive if we would put it into action.
Yeah. Well, with me today, Chad Connelly, founder, CEO of Faith Wins. You can find out additional information about this wonderful organization, faithwins.org, faithwins.org. You mentioned your trip to Israel. Is that just not an amazing experience?
Oh, man. You know, we've partnered with the Joshua Fund. My friend Joel Rosenberg, I'm on his All Israel News board. And if people want to know about the Middle East, they ought to be reading All Israel News. But,
yes,
of course, Joel's a prolific Christian author. We've been friends for a long time, but we're doing at least one trip a year. And I said, look, Joel, if I can handpick the pastors from key states that I need help in, he said, Chad, I don't know any pastors. You're the one that goes in their churches. Yeah, you pick, and we find donors who support the trip. And Bo, it is wonderful. Everybody ought to go to walk where Jesus walked. And you know, now that the city of David's been almost fully uncovered, they're literally telling you this is the first place we can ever say we know Jesus was here.
Yep.
I posted a picture of me and Dana in the city of David, and I'm barefooted. Everybody's like, why are you barefooted? Because that is where the Savior walked, and my feet were pretty dirty. Dana didn't want to join me in the barefooted escapade, but it's so moving. You know, you just weep your way through it. But it's a powerful place. We're looking forward to going back. We were the largest evangelical group to go since the war, so they turned out the red carpet. We met with President Herzog. We spent 45 minutes with him in what was their White House, and he was just fantastic, and it was a special trip. But I've been 5 times now, and I can't wait to go back.
Yeah, you know, and I have been 5 times as well. We had planned my 6th trip in October. Sadly, that has been canceled for now, just because of the situation over there. But we'll get it back on the calendar, hopefully. But I saw some of the photos that you posted at the City of David, and I was able to go there my first time about 7 years ago, and I met Zeb Ornstein, and Zeb took us down through there, and I saw the photo of you standing on that stone that they are pretty certain Jesus stood on as he preached to people coming through there, and I tell you, that is just a special experience, knowing that you're standing right where Jesus stood.
Yeah, and, you know, Zeb's become a good friend. We were texting yesterday. I was checking on he and his family with the ongoing war, and he's just become a buddy. And I send every pastor who takes a trip, I connect him with Zeb. And if you did Zeb's tour, you did the best tour in Israel. And, you know, he's Jewish. He's a New Jersey boy who moved over there. But, you know, he's just become a fast friend. And him unveiling that for people is beyond words to me, Joey, to say this is where the Savior walked, the disciples would have walked here. And let's think about it. That City of David Pilgrimage Road, that will be the most traversed piece of real estate on the planet when it opens up for the public.
Yep, exactly. I mean, it is just special. And you know, I'm trying to get Zeb to come over and visit us here in the Carolinas. Maybe you can help me out with that. Hey, Chad Connelly with me today. Chad, can you hang around with us for another segment here?
Absolutely. You know it.
All right. We'll be back in just a moment. Chad Connelly, my guest today, my friend Chad Connelly, founder and CEO of Faith Wins, is with us today. Chad, let's talk about, you know, there was a recent IRS ruling that finally agrees that pastors who endorse political candidates from the pulpit should not risk losing their tax-exempt status. I mean, this is a huge deal, right?
Yeah, it's a huge deal, Joey, and I'm glad you picked up on it. You know, it's what we've contended forever, is pastors don't lose their First Amendment rights behind the pulpit. We've always said you don't have diminished rights. I believe you've got expanded rights because you're a man of the cloth. You're one of the people who are talking to God. You've got God's word. And so all this ruling does is agree with what we've said for years. And, you know, we've told people it's not that you as the church need to ever say you must vote for, but it ought to be that they should not be scared of talking about the issues and who they relate to as a candidate. And I think what's happened with this Johnson Amendment, it's acted as a suppression. And a lot of people, let's face it, and even the more liberal denominations have used it as a hedge to avoid talking about the issues they ought to be talking about.
Yeah. Chad, do you believe that because of this in the past, that this has been typically one of the biggest resistance of pastors who felt that they just couldn't talk about their political beliefs?
You know, I think that it's been used as an excuse. I've heard it a lot, Joey. I've been in 49 states doing these meetings now with pastors in the last 9 years, or really 10 or 11 years even, and it's been used as a crutch, no question about it. But, you know, most of the pastors I talk to aren't wallflowers anyway. It didn't hold down most of them, but the ones they talk to on the periphery, they have absolutely used it as a crutch and an excuse, saying, hey, I can't because of it's illegal. They've been misinformed, and sometimes it's by their denomination. Let's face it, sometimes it's somebody in the church who gives a lot of money, but a lot of times it's just their preference. It gives them an out to avoid talking about things that are uncomfortable. I had a pastor one time that said, Chad, we just don't do politics. And I said, well, Pastor, can you tell me where in your Bible politics begins and your spiritual life ends? And, of course, that kind of stopped him in his tracks. And I said, you know, there's not a book of the Bible where God's people aren't talking to, with, from, or about political leaders. Throughout the Bible, there are examples to show. And so I think it's just been used against us by the left, honestly, to hold people down.
Yeah. Chad Connelly is my guest today, and Chad's been involved in Republican Party politics for years. He served as chairman of the party in my home state of South Carolina, instrumental in hosting 2 nationally televised presidential debates. He led the effort to hold the largest presidential preference primary at the time. That background, obviously, Chad, prepared you for your work with pastors today. Let me ask you, back when you first thought of the idea of faith wins and you kind of became involved in the faith movement like that, has it been more or less of a challenge to get pastors involved?
I think it's less. I think as you go out there and talk to them, and I connect pastors, right? We do meetings with a bunch of pastors. It's getting better because they're realizing what they really ought to be doing. And when they see a buddy pastor doing it, Joey, I think it makes them go, okay, I should be doing this. I was actually sitting in a meeting, a very high-level meeting for a very high-level office, watching consultants and how they treated Christians in particular, but pastors too, when I decided I'm going to do this for myself in a C3 capacity. And we're going to help the good candidates that believe in the right stuff, but we're going to do it in a non-threatening, spiritual manner that has a political impact, not in a political manner that doesn't deliver anything. And it was in a meeting room, listening to consultants talk about people like me and you and the things we care about, that made me want to start Faith Wins.
Yeah. You know, there's been a lot of talk, especially among the Democrats, of just how Donald Trump won as he did in November. What role do you believe that the faith-based vote played in the election of President Trump last November?
President Trump knows this. It's the decisive part. It is the difference maker. Faith vote came out bigger than ever for President Trump. I think 82% of self-identified evangelicals voted for President Trump. I think things like Israel, pro-life. I mean, look, this guy, by all accounts, is the most pro-life president in American history. Between the judges that overturned the Dobbs decision, overturning Roe v. Wade, to now defunding Planned Parenthood in one big beautiful bill, moving the embassy. You've probably been to the new embassy in Jerusalem. Yep. It's stuff like that people have promised us as believers. Democrats and Republicans our entire lives. And, faith voters look at that stuff, and there's no question, though, the pocketbook issues matter to people in churches, too. Now, consultants won't believe that most of the time, but people in churches care about that stuff. But the core issues that President Trump has addressed like no other president, those were the difference makers.
Talking about the embassy, yes, and we're talking about our mutual friend Zeb Ornstein.
Yep.
He got us, and it was Mike Gallagher and myself several years ago. They were just ready to open the embassy. The ambassador had not even been in there himself yet, and Zeb got Mike Gallagher and me a tour. They were literally still painting and hanging the art on the wall when we were able to go into the ambassador's office.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I'm going to tell Zeb we're buddies, and tell him we're going to do a trip over there sometime. And, he's just such a great guy. And, of course, I know Governor Huckabee as well. I've been texting with him. Next time I take a trip, we're going to do something with him at the embassy. We've been talking about doing that. So we've got some friends in some great places, and it's those kind of appointments, too. As you know, personnel is policy. I think that speaks volumes to people of faith who look at the things that President Trump said. He said it, and he's delivered on it. Promises made, promises kept, as he says. And I believe that's resonating throughout society. I got to tell you, Joey, when we landed in Israel in April, we got to Israel, and there were massive banners unfurled from the big buildings downtown. Thank you, President Donald Trump. Yeah. Dana and I were ever. There's a collective sigh of relief because this guy's been elected.
Yeah, that is for sure. Chad Connelly with us today, CEO, founder of Faith Wins. You can find out additional information at faithwins.org. So, Chad, as we head into the fall, we're starting to think about the 2026 midterms. How do you feel about 2026?
Everything's going our way, Joey, but let's face it, we haven't done very well when President Trump's not on the ballot. So I've been telling donors and activists, we got to do the blocking and tackling. We can't be fighting each other, and we can't be arguing about little stuff. We've got to do the basics to go win. I was in Arizona earlier this week. I was in Georgia today. I'm going to every other key state. We've got to go do the basics, put people in place now, and not take it for granted, brother.
Yeah. And I would imagine that one component of that is voter registration. Is that right?
You better believe it. We're already working hard, picking out the key churches in key districts. And we're just telling them, look, I don't need you to charge up the beach at D-Day, but can you register 100% of your church and teach and devote biblical values? We are going to press in on this Johnson Amendment being obliterated, and we're going to use that circular I did, the letter to the editor, the opinion thing that went everywhere, and we're going to circulate that to churches all over America in every state we're working in. We've already identified a key leader in every state that's going to have a Senate race or is a battleground state and are key congressional, and we're going to press in on that and make sure we get Christians registered to vote, brother. We're actually identifying chaseable ballots in most of those states already.
Yeah. So the $1 million question here, Chad, is do you believe pastors are really going to take advantage of this recent IRS ruling, and which is basically said, yes, you can talk about your political beliefs, you can talk about it from the pulpit?
My message won't change, Joey. I'm going to keep saying what we've been saying, but I am certainly going to press harder with states to tell them to use this so that nobody hides behind an old excuse that's been taken out. So, yeah, I think that, listen, I'm encouraged. We were just with some folks who supported us in Georgia and talking about this very issue in Athens a little bit ago before we headed. We're on the road to Nashville. By the way, if I lose you, I'm in the mountains a little bit. But I think that it is engaged, are going to utilize it. But I'm encouraged. I see a big change happening in our nation, and it's long overdue.
Yep. Chad, one final question for you, and then let's talk about the church's involvement. I mean, what would you say is the church's biggest challenge when it comes to that balance between teaching the Bible and being involved in the political process?
I think, quite frankly, some of them it's like people teaching the Bible. It has nothing to do with politics.
Yeah, I think we're losing Chad there.
I'm sorry, brother.
That's all right. Hey, you be safe up in the mountains there. Have a safe trip.
Yeah.
We'll catch up and continue this conversation another time in the future, Chad.
God bless you, Joey. Take care, brother.
Appreciate what you do, my friend. Chad Connelly, he is chairman, CEO, and founder of Faith Wins. And look, if you're not familiar with the work that Faith Wins is doing, you need to check them out. Again, go to faithwins.org, faithwins.org. If you're a pastor, if you're a member of a church somewhere and you want your church to be involved and you think that you should play a role, because, again, 2026 is going to be as important as 2024 was, probably more important, in that we have to maintain a majority in both the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. We need to build on those majorities so that we can complete and continue the agenda that people elected Donald Trump to do last November. And a big component of that is the faith component. And as I was talking about earlier in the show today, is, as Christians, it is our duty, I believe, to be involved, to not sit back and think, well, as a Christian, I shouldn't be talking about my political beliefs. Yes, you should, because I can promise you that the left, the non-believers, they're going to be talking about their beliefs. They have not been silent. They're not shy about trying to push their beliefs and to convince people in modern culture that their way is the right way. So we have to be just as aggressive. We have to be just as outspoken and talk about Jesus Christ and the word of the Lord, and to put Christian men and women in positions of leadership. Because if we don't, we may not have that chance down the road. I believe that Donald Trump's election in November of 2024 was at a pivotal time. We can turn things around. We can turn some of the evil around that we are witnessing in our world, but we have to have the right men and women in leadership positions to do that, and next year is the time to do that. Joey Hudson here. America is facing a health crisis, and the answer isn't more meds. I lost over 30 pounds on the PhD weight loss plan without Ozempic or any weight loss shots. Don't settle for a lifetime of medication. GLP-1 injections like Ozempic help some people lose weight, but they come with side effects, high cost, and most gain it back when they stop. At PhD Weight Loss, we reveal Big Pharma's big secret. Your body already makes GLP-1, the appetite-fighting hormone. Our program helps your body make it naturally so you'll drop the pounds faster. With the PhD method, no side effects, no long-term risk, no rebound weight gain, just natural, lasting results, all without hunger or cravings. Right now, get a free body scan and personalized metabolic assessment. Discover your body's true potential without a shot. It's free and gives you the keys to your personalized plan. Do like I did and don't trade your health for a quick fix. Call now at 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900, or visit myphdweightloss.com, myphdweightloss.com. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Matt Wills is the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Greenville Chamber of Commerce. Matt is responsible for monitoring what is happening at all levels of government, with a particular focus on the political issues facing business owners. It's always a pleasure to have you, Matt. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back.
I happened to be at an event this week, and there were about 6-8 legislators there, and they were already talking about what awaits them when they return in January. Give us a quick overview of what is happening behind the scenes with businesses and what you guys at the Chamber are working on to prioritize what you'll be working on at the next session.
Sure. Yeah. Obviously, there's some lingering issues that were started this past session, and that will need to be kind of finalized going into the next year before we adjourn on the 100. I think it's the 123rd session of the General Assembly here in South Carolina. But some of the major pieces that continue to be on the plate is obviously transportation or infrastructure issues. There are a bunch of meetings getting ready to take place on infrastructure modernization committee that got put together by the speaker here in the off session. So they were going to be hearing some going on the road here to hear some public input on some things and then get a bill drafted and get it over the finish line on the House side and get the Senate to take it up as well. But I think some of the things that we saw begin this past session was obviously the tax reform side, and then we've got some bigger pieces left of lawsuit reform, tort reform, if you will, that need to be addressed. Home builders, medical malpractice stuff needs to be addressed in the same manner that we saw liquor liability addressed this year.
Yeah. And speaking of that, of course, you and I spent a lot of time talking about that this past session as they were trying to make liability insurance more affordable. As you mentioned, they were kind of targeting restaurants and bars specifically, but to lower costs for all businesses. That law doesn't take effect until January the 1st, 2026, but there's already a lot of talk about the next step. There was an op-ed in the South Carolina Daily Gazette last week written by Sydney Lynn, who is an attorney, and she's already predicting that this was just a complete failure. And here's a sentence that she wrote there. She said, "This bill did not fix a crisis. It simply passed the burden on to victims. What is guaranteed? That insurance companies will continue to grow their profits while facing less scrutiny and fewer obligations to the people they serve." And, of course, her whole op-ed was around the fact that she doesn't believe that what passed this year is going to solve the problem.
It's tough for me to hear trial lawyers talk about victims in these circumstances because right off the top of a victim settlement in these cases, which they are rightly entitled to, should something happen to them and settlements get awarded or judgments get awarded to their favor, but their attorneys take a significant portion of that away from them for the work, quote unquote, that they do for these folks, and it's starting to become falling on deaf ears, if you will, for trial attorneys and trial lawyers and these billboard lawyers that you see all the time either on TV or driving down the interstate talking about victims. It's not about victims; it's about their bottom line, and they don't like people messing with their bottom line. And unfortunately, this is one of the things that we've had to fight. The trial lawyer lobby is quite significant. It is quite loud, deep pockets, and they're going to have their voice heard. It's just vital that small businesses across the board continue to fight as well and utilize the tools that their associations give them, their business communities give them, and chambers across the state. And what we do is largely a facilitator role on the advocacy front, is that we're able to tell stories of how these things affect people in day-to-day situations.
Yeah.
And it's extremely unfortunate that trial lawyers want to grasp onto and re-victimize folks that have gone through something very traumatic in their life. It's unfortunate that it comes to that. They are in very much self-preservation mode at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I got a feeling, Matt, that you and I are going to be spending more time talking about liability insurance and tort reform again next session, as this issue just is not going to go away.
I certainly feel like we are going to be talking about it a lot. I'm very hopeful in some of the conversations that I've had with folks that serve in our legislature. In the upstate, we're very blessed with some fantastic representatives and senators that get it.
Yeah.
Obviously, one that comes to mind specifically, or a couple that come to mind specifically, are the ones that actually drafted S-244 last year and that were sponsors and helped carry it through the Senate in a form that we thought was very acceptable and moved in the right direction. Wasn't a perfect product. No legislation is ever going to be. But we thought that we could get these things moving and at least having a deeper conversation and discussion about what we can do as we go forward into 2026. And I'm optimistic as we roll into that time frame and start planning our advocacy agenda for 2026 here at the Greenville Chamber. But that's certainly going to remain at the top of the list.
Yep. I mentioned the event that I attended this past week with a number of legislators there, and one of the top issues that they were asked of people who were there is, of course, what's going to happen with income tax. As we got our hopes up that we were going to see a decrease in state income tax, with potentially wiping it out altogether in the coming years. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's realistic to think that we may see some major changes in state income tax?
I certainly think we're going to see some major changes. I look, the timeline and structure on these things is always a little bit funky when it comes to tax reform and a huge issue like that. I think the Senate wanted to take their time with it a little bit longer than having it for just a couple days right at the end of session and pushing something through that they didn't have the time to put their diligence in the same way the House did. So I think something is coming that will be a significant change. But ultimately the goal and what is state law currently is getting the tax rate down to zero. And obviously there's many things that have to happen for us to get to that point. But I think the reform package that's coming, and certainly the reform package that passed the House, gets to that zero number a little bit quicker than what current law is. So I would not expect Senator Peeler, Chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, to be out income taxed by the House.
Yep.
To look for something maybe a little bit more aggressive on the Senate side, which ultimately just benefits the taxpayer. With the volume of folks that are coming into the state and the volume of and tax bases increasing across the state, and then obviously the Department of Commerce continuing to push, infrastructure or not infrastructure development, economic development in the state, broadening the state tax base. That can only help and get us down to zero a little bit quicker.
Yep. Matt Wills, always a pleasure. Look forward to catching up with you again soon, and we're going to have a busy session as we. It's hard to believe it's July and we're already talking about January.
It is, but and the funny part about it is when I came in last year, it immediately started planning for January, and that's one of those things where it just doesn't seem to stop.
Yeah, that's for sure. Matt, always a pleasure. We'll talk again real soon.
You got it. Thank you.
That's it for this special weekend edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.